Welcome to the 1457 podcast from Scotland, where golf began, a digital platform where we try to inspire golfers near and far to come to Scotland to play golf. You'll find all you need to know through our great photography, short films and stories, and of course our podcasts on our website, scotlandwheregolfbegan.com. You'll find us on social at Where Golf Began and Facebook, Scotland Where Golf Began. But first, our resident panel of golf nuts, Dave Kerr from Fairways to Heaven. Dave, how are you doing tonight?
Very well, as ever. You know, got a wee bit of a cold, but we're not going to complain about it. It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Well, you're sounding good. But unlike our other co-pilot, Ross Flanagan, the Scuzzy, who may pop in and out tonight or not, but he is. He said to me he's on the mixing desk pushing the buttons. I would have said he normally pushes everyone's buttons most of the time, but anyway, tonight I'm sure he'll be coming and push the odd button where required. And our guest tonight is Gordon Bell. I've known him for a very long time. He's tried to disown me on numerous occasions. A great friend. And Gordon's a master of blending, which you'll talk about, and bearing his blushes, a superb golfer. He's played competitive golf a lot in his career. He's a member of Bruntsfield, Gullane, Garten, and has played all around the world in all sorts of different tournaments and so on. So his understanding of golf in Scotland and whisky and what those two things mean to this country is tremendous. So Gordon, kick off. When did you get into golf and how?
Well, I got into golf through snooker, which is a very strange way of doing it, I know. But at home, we had a quarter-sized snooker table, and my mother taught me how to play snooker. I won my first snooker tournament when I was 12 years old, went on to win the Scottish Boys Championship, and thought I was really quite good. When a friend of mine I played with at the RAF club, I had no connection to the RAF club, I just played for their team, phoned me to say that he had John Spencer, who was then the world snooker champion, coming to stay with him. And John Spencer had agreed to do an exhibition match. And he said he was contacting a few of the better amateur players to see if they wanted to play a frame with John Spencer. And I said, oh yes, I'd love to do that. I was telling somebody this story recently that John Spencer broke off. I putted a red, a blue, red, rattled a blue in the top pocket, and that was my last shot. He cleared the table with 123 break. And I thought, I'm not really that good at this game. I should try something else. So I bought myself a set of golf clubs and took myself down to Silverknowes Golf Club to learn how to play golf. And I have to say, almost 50 years on, I'm still learning.
The great thing about golf is it's good goal if, it's golling and if only, because you never stop learning, do you? Even at your height of your powers. But as we get older, our bodies don't work quite so well, and you got to kind of adapt to that. So I mean, how have you found golf's going to help you through life and early life competitive, and then through later life?
Well, it's been great fun, and there's quite a strong association with golf and connection with golf and whisky. I mean, we were both members of the Edinburgh and Leith licensed vigilers, the Vics as they call it. And you and I have had some tasty games over the years. I don't know if you remember, I upset you terribly at Bruntsfield when we were playing a match play tie. Second hole, I'm sure you do remember it. When you stiffed an iron shot with your second, and for a kick in birdie, as the Americans call it, and you got really quite upset when I holed my second shot for an eagle.
We tried to erase that from my.
Sure you have.
I remember my best victory in golf was the first time I beat Gordon in a game of golf when I won 20p. That is still the biggest victory I have ever come away with. You know, a lot about keeping your right knee not moving and collapsing on the back of you. It was, yeah, I know. Thanks for reminding me about that.
I also remember you took me to, what was the course in Cook of Devon you were a member of?
Muckrat.
Muckert, that's right,
Yeah.
Muckert. You took me there because I hadn't played there. I'd birdied the first 4 holes and said, "This is a really raised golf course."
Yeah, that's what I like about Garden. Nothing.
Having said that, you got your own bag. I think last time we played, you took me to Renaissance to play off the back tees, which was I thought just a bridge too far.
Well, it's all about Katrina Matthews on the podcast a while ago, and the question was, which was the first golf course you played? And it was a wee course at North Berwick. Which one was the last course you played? The old course. How'd you get on? I won, and I just burst out laughing because for the top pro golfer, it's not how many you take. All it is, did you win or lose?
But golf is a great leveler, isn't it? It brings you down to earth, and I've had a lot of those experiences over the years. I was fortunate enough through Johnnie Walker to play in a number of pro-ams, and I remember playing in the Martini Pro-Am at Lindrick, south of Manchester, and going out to the practice putting green before I went to the first tee. And there was Ballesteros and Nick Faldo both putting. I thought, well, I'm playing in this, so I'm quite entitled to have a putt. So I stood at one end, putted for a flag in the middle, and the ball went past the flag, went far end, and dropped in the rose bushes. I remember standing there thinking, do I really want to go and pick that ball up?
Might go back to snooker.
Just leave it.
Looking around and trying to pretend it was someone else. And
That's right.
we've all been there.
We've all been there. Yes. That was one of many humiliating golf experiences I've had.
But the handicap, is such a great thing. I mean, it's the only game that I know where you can play against somebody else, whether it's a top pro, and you can come off and have a bit of a competitive match, and actually, you walk off as a lower handicap golfer feeling you've lost. You've actually thrashed the person in strokes, but you actually feel that you've lost. I don't think there's any other game I can think of that's quite like that. Can you?
No, I can't really. No, that's I- when I had a lower handicap, I've on occasions gone down round and scratch and found myself losing 6 and 5. What on earth happened there?
What do you think of the new handicapping system?
I
And
don't like it at all. I think one of the best things they did a few years ago now was said you had a handicap for life. I was quite happy with that. I don't really play competitive golf now.
Mhm.
And I was quite happy just to keep my handicap, and whether I could play to it or not was never not really relevant. But now you're actually forced into playing competitive golf, and you don't necessarily want to play competitive golf. And I remember at Bruntsfield, as you said, and last year somebody invited me to play in called a wrong way round competition, where you play the course from the 18th to the 1st. And I got an email from the secretary saying, you can play, but you can't count because your handicap's not current. I thought that's getting silly. But in bounce competitions, you can't even play. So I'm not a fan of it. I think it's too complicated by far. Don't really understand it, Malcolm, to tell you the truth.
What do you boys think of the new handicap system, Dave?
Yeah, again, I think it's I- I've not quite I'm not quite got used to it yet, if I'm honest. I think I still, if I have a bad round, I still mentally think to myself, well, we'll go up .1 tomorrow then. You know what I mean? And I still got that. I'm kind of just so ingrained in that as a concept. I think it relies on you probably playing very regularly and putting in all your cards. Um, and personally, for me, golf's a social game, and I don't want every round I play to be with a card in hand and, counting every stroke. So, but for me, that's the kind of downside of it. It's kind of it's I if you adopt that way of playing the game, then it sucks some of the joy out of the game for me. But yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
not a massive fan.
Going back to the Vix, Gordon, one of the things we played in that was the Guardian. You want to give a wee
Oh,
bit
yes.
of that marvelous trophy? And it started as foursomes, and then the match, all four playing each other, and then going on now to Stableford. Do you want to tell us a wee bit the history of that tournament, and a wee bit about that fantastic trophy?
Yes, it goes back to the Guardian trade newspaper, and it was Originally, I think Fife were in it. It was Glasgow, Fife, Edinburgh, and was it Dundee?
Dundee, I think, yeah.
Yes, as I remember I remember Dundee turning up with a team that had about 4 people who were in the licence trade. The rest were the rest were dead ringers. I remember playing against Glasgow once, so a young lad who hit the ball incredibly well, and I said to him, What do you do in the trade?" He said, My dad's got a pub." And I said, "All right, and do you work in it?" He said, "Well, not really." He said, I'm really a professional golfer." So, I mean, the Guardian Trophy was very competitive, as you say. It was foursomes, and just that's the most stressful form of golf. Goes back a long way, and it still is very competitive. But it's a team tournament, and it's something that people like to win. We all like to win, but it's particularly competitive.
But I think it's got more kind of it's moved now from scratch foursomes to handicap teams of 12. So whilst it's still very competitive, it's moved to, not nearly so many people being able to play at the right kind of level to compete, which is a reflection of probably modern day how hard people are working. Not they didn't work hard in that day, but we didn't have mobile phones and one of the great things and the reps they could be visiting people but playing the golf because they didn't have trackers on their cars and all the rest of it.
Yes, indeed.
But actually, I mean, doing a lot of work and making a lot of sales, because that was one of the points behind something like the VIX, because you had the assistants in Edinburgh, which was people worked in the licensed trade, but the VIX was for the owners, so they could entertain and talk to each other and talk about the problems of the day. So I mean, golf's very much been into that kind of thing as well.
Yes, the Assistance was formed about 10 years after the VIX. The VIX was 1890.
Yeah.
Because our centenary year was 1990. That was a great occasion. And the Assistance was formed, I think, early 1900s. And there was a quote that was to give the people who worked in the trade, who didn't own pubs, but who worked in the trade, to give them some fresh air and exercise. That's where that came from.
Yeah. And you will go back to golf in a minute, but you're Johnny. You weren't a master blender. What were you? You were a
Master of blending. My
master of blender.
career started in Leith with a company called William Muir Bond 9 on Commercial Street. They were blenders and bottlers for the industry, and my early blending experience, I remember stirring vats of whiskey with giant wooden paddles and rolling casks of over 100 gallons that were very heavy and trying to avoid running over my toes because that's days before steel toe caps. But again, my blending experience there, stayed with them for 27 years and left to join the mighty DCL, Distillers Company Limited.
And any correlation between Leith and whiskey and golf?
Oh yes, very much.
I'm winding Roscoe up there, try to poke the bear because he's originally a big Leith and a Jambo fan.
All right. Oh, I knew there was something I didn't like about him. I'm a heavy. No, the huge connection. Leith in those days was a real whiskey hub with companies like McDonald and Muir. Highland Queen was just along the road from Bond 9, and there was VAT 69, Crawford's, McKinley's, McDonald Greenleys with Old Parr. There was a lot of whiskey companies in Leith in those days. And of course, Leith Links was one of the, I mean, you're the golf historian, Malcolm, so you can tell us more about it than I can, but Leith Links was one of the early mentions of golf in Scotland.
Yeah, we told the story the other day. That's where the Honourable Company played, where the first rules of golf were written, and John Rattery was captain when he won he was an archer, so he won the arrow, and then when he brought that, he won the club, which you'll see displayed at Muirfield. So yeah, huge connection with so really golf was, yeah, that was one of the first places for golf. But then you were saying you started working with, you moved on to Johnnie Walker. So what were you doing there?
Well, I went to join the DCL, Distillers Company Limited, as a Scottish sales manager, and went on to become general manager. That was in 84. But in 86, a man called James Gulliver, you may remember, Argyll, put in an audacious reverse takeover bid for the DCL because they were convinced that Jimmy Gulliver reckoned he could make a much better job of running the company than the directors who were based in London at the time. And that was dismissed initially as a derisory offer. But as time went on, they realised that they weren't going to win, so they turned to Guinness as a white knight, as they call it, to come in and merge with them. And that took place. And interstage right, that nice man Ernest Saunders, who came in and immediately kicked everyone into touch, had been in a senior position in the DCL, and that was just part of the whole thing. It was taken over by Guinness. I was given a job in senior sales, national accounts, but Guinness approach was very FMCG. They call it fast moving consumer goods. Pile them high, sell them cheap, believed in stock pressure. And the Scotch whisky business was not like that. It was more traditional. Not that it wasn't. It's not a good thing. It's not that there's not room for change. And Guinness did some good things. One of the things they did, I remember, I was involved with the launch of Johnnie Walker Blue Label.
Yeah.
That was in 1986. And the criticism from the trade press was that nobody's ever going to pay more than £100 for a bottle of Scotch whisky. And how wrong could you be? That was really what started the premium whisky market. And another thing that Guinness did, a young marketeer, Roy McMillan, his name was, he created a concept called the classic malts that you may remember.
Yeah.
Which was based on the regionality of single malt whiskies. And until that time, single malt whiskies were a very small part of the whisky market. And they chose Glenkinchie from Lowlands, Cragganmore from Speyside, Dalwhinnie from the Highlands, Oban from West Highlands, Talisker from Skye, and Lagavulin from Islay, with the idea that there was a tie-in between the whisky characteristics and the geography, and that made the classic malts very successful and kick-started the single malt market, which is now an important part. But the the original concept that was based on was a thing called the malt cellar, and typical marketeers, there was 7 single malts in the malt cellar. Nobody told them that 7 bottles don't fit into a case. They revised it. They had to cut it down to 6. But that was just part of it. But I didn't really appreciate what Guinness were doing. Their approach, I say, was very FMCG. And I decided to move on, and they said, with my whisky knowledge and my background, would I like to become a brand ambassador in the UK for Bell's and for the classic malts? I said, I'll give it a go, which I really enjoyed doing that. But then they came up with the idea of what they call a mentor program for America, based not on selling, but on product knowledge. And the mentor program involved, they bought into mailing lists of 20 to 25-year-old males who, I think, read this New York Times or something like that, and sent them a message saying that the master of blending for Johnnie Walker was coming to town if they wanted to hear about Scotland, Scotch whisky, and Johnnie Walker this free phone number. It was an incredibly successful promotion. We did it in Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., Dallas, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Los Angeles was my favorite because it was the Playboy Mansion. And they got 300 people at a time bust into the Playboy Mansion. But it was one of the few promotions you could actually track the effectiveness of it, because the sales of Johnnie Walker Black, which was the whiskey we were pushing, went up by 30, 40, 50% in the cities that we were doing the promotion. That was in a flat market, which means we were taking the business away from our competitors. But they did that for about 5 years and then decided to roll out the concept of mentoring the power of product knowledge to other countries throughout the world. So the last 10 years I spent traveling for Johnnie Walker, doing PR work, some other radio interviews, journalist interviews, tastings and training. So it was a great way to spend time. But after 21 years of doing it in total, I decided that the time was, I'd had enough of hotels and airports. So I decided to retire early and play golf.
So what's the correlation that you find between golf and whiskey? Because you got involved with golf quite a lot when you were doing that work. And, what's the correlation of golf and whiskey and Scotland as a selling point for both?
It's just very Scottish, Malcolm. What we used to do with the mentor programs was not just talk to people about Johnnie Walker, but tell them all about Scotland. There's 5 million people. We make the finest whiskies in the world, and explain that whiskey is not just whiskey, that Scotch whiskey can only be made and matured in Scotland. And we explained where Scotch whiskey came from, the history, which is must be in time similar to the golf. 1494 was the earliest mention of Scotch whiskey in the Scottish Exchequer Rolls, so government records of the day, sometimes called the pipe rolls because they were kept in lead pipes. And it's 8 balls of malt or corn to barge on core with to make aqua vitae, which was Latin for the water of life, which became Gaelic ushkaba, which became whisky, and round about the 1700s it was anglicised to whiskey. So it goes back a long way, as does golf. Very Scottish.
So Dave, how do you find in tour operators that? How do you find whiskey ties into the guys you're bringing over to play golf?
Yeah, again, I think we even even the golfers who come who don't particularly have a taste for whiskey before they come are always very keen to try it. Um, but there's definitely a strong crossover between the golf and the whiskey, particularly the American market. And we typically would have a bottle of whiskey on the bus with them, and they'll take one, maybe take one for every birthday they have or something like that. But getting someone along and running tasting sessions, and obviously, you've talked about Johnnie Walker quite a bit there, Gordon, but like that new facility down on Princess Street in Edinburgh, um, it manages to cover the people who don't have a strong kind of association with whiskey in advance, right through to people who are like heavy connoisseurs of whiskey, and everything in between, basically. So again, I think it's it's a great facility to have on our doorstep here in Edinburgh, certainly. So yeah, it's there's yeah we've seen an ever deepening demand for taking distillery tours along with the golf as well. I think we've seen in the last since COVID, we've seen people look to spend more time off the golf course, and one of those things that they want to do is take distillery tours. Very popular.
Talking about distillery tours, I remember it's, 1969, Glenfiddich were the first distillery in Scotland to open their door to visitors. And everybody in the trade said, "Why are they doing that? What a dumb thing to do." And now Glenfiddich, or Glenfiddich as they called it, is the number 1 selling malt in the world, and a lot of it, I'm sure, has to do with the fact that people went and looked round the distillery and had a loyalty to it.
It's almost it's assumed now though, because I know we had some clients. Where did they turn up? They just turned up to a distillery on spec and were told, "Oh, we don't do tours." You're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" I think it's just become assumed now that every distillery opens their doors and welcomes people in. So yeah, it's I wouldn't have pegged Glenfiddich as being the front runner there, but that's great. Good trivia. Good to know.
Yes.
The Don was talking about, giving whiskey talks and so on. I remember being asked by 4-5 Commander to go and give a talk to the officers' mess on whiskey, because when our youngsters were there in 82, we donated a bottle of whiskey when we left, and that tradition has been maintained, and it's replaced. So the whiskey collection in 4-5 Commander officers' mess is fantastic. So I phoned Gordon for some advice as to what to do. He said, advice is very simple. Ask me to come and do it. Which I did.
I remember that, Malcolm. There were it's such a nice crowd of guys in the officers' mess. They were really good, and they said to me, how much is your fee?" And I said, "I wouldn't dream of charging you." And at the end, they said, "Thank you for coming. Here's here's a gift for you." And it was a long box. And I took the gift and went to the car. This is about 11 o'clock at night. And I opened the box, and it was a commando dagger, 12 inches long. And I thought, if I was stopped by the police driving me back to Edinburgh, because where have you been? I've been doing a whiskey tasting. Oh, really? And what's in the box?
I didn't get one of those. That's actually quite an honor, honored to get one of those. But
Oh, it's a lovely dagger, don't get me wrong.
no, yeah.
Do you know, as my wife was in the R&R, and she said, "I can show you how to use it if you like." No.
Brilliant. So I remember calling you late one night, and well, I didn't think it was late one night, but you thought it was late one night because I think you were in Australia. What were you doing? What were you doing when I called you?
I was I was sleeping, Malcolm.
I kind of set that one up, I guess, didn't I?
Yeah, it happened it happened quite often. People would phone and say, "Oh, what time is it with you? Is it 3 o'clock in the morning?" And they would say, "Oh, sorry about that. But while you're on." No, I was in Australia playing in the Johnnie Walker Classic at Classic Pro-Am at Pines in Perth. That was a great experience. They had a charity event before the Pro-Am, played 9-hole Texas Scramble with Greg Norman, who was absolutely charming, lovely guy to play with. But one experience, or well, two experiences from that. One is I hadn't played for a while. I asked to go to the practice ground and hit a few balls. And the guy that was looking after me said, "Yes, sure, no problem at all." Drove me across in a buggy and gave me a bucket of balls, pointing me to a space. And I looked round and I thought, they're all professionals. And I stood there wondering what to do. So I took out an 8-iron and tried to look as inconspicuous as possible. And about 5 minutes later, this very officious looking lady came along and steward emblazoned on her and said, "Sir, I don't think you should be here. This is for professionals only." I said, "Well, actually, I'm with Johnnie Walker." And she went away and came back 10 minutes later and said, "Yes, you're good to go." He said, "You're the man. You're fine. Are you playing in the Pro-Am?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Come back tomorrow." I said, "No chance whatsoever." I was absolutely terrified. But it was a great experience. The other thing I remember from that is, and the team, the Texas Scramble team, was a guy Justin Leonard, not Justin. Oh God, what is his name? The opening bat for Australia. Um,
Oh,
Justin, whatever. Anyway, he's very nice guy, but wasn't the world's best golfer. He he'd been for a golf lesson that morning, which was not a good thing to do. He stood on the first tee looking very uncomfortable and launched this ball miles out of bounds over the trees. To his credit, he turned to the crowd and said, "In the game I play, that would have been a 6."
Justin
Right.
Justin Langer is the
Langer, that's it.
Justin Langer.
Yes. Very, very good company. And not the world's best golfer, but
you must have played quite a few of those things, then, did you?
yeah, I was very, very lucky. I played one of the good things Guinness did golf wise was they moved the Scottish Open to Glen Eagles. That was 1987, and sponsored it with bells. It became the Bells Scottish Open, which the company owned Glen Eagles Hotel. So it was a great way of promoting not just the hotel and golf, but Scotland, because it was the only tournament out with the Open that was televised in America, and it was second only to the Open in terms of the crowds that we.
Because we're back to there just about now with Renaissance. It's the biggest outside major, apart from possibly the Players, and they're probably both bigger than the Masters,
Gosh,
because the Masters is a smaller field. But it's Scottish Open's always had a presence, even though it's moved around different places and in different kind of guises. But Glen Eagles was great up around there.
you were talking about golf history, and one of the pro-ams I played with Ben Crenshaw, who was really good to play with, lovely man, and he told me a great story about someone you would know, Archie Baird,
Yeah.
a golf historian, member of Gullane.
Mm-hmm.
I used to play a lot with Archie at Gullane, and Ben Crenshaw told me the story that he had been into Royal Musselburgh. Crenshaw was a big golf historian himself, into Royal Musselburgh to see some of the memorabilia there. And he thought, well, I'm pretty close to Gullane. He had corresponded with Archie, but he had never met him. He thought, I'll just take a chance and drive on to Gullane, see if he's around. So he went into the pro shop. Remember, Jimmy Hume was a pro in those days, and said to Jimmy, is Archie Baird around? Jimmy said, you've just missed him. He's playing this morning and he's gone home. And Crenshaw said, oh, that's a pity. He said, no, it's not a problem. He only lives in Aberlady. I'll give him a call. So he said, he picked up the phone and said, Archie, Ben Crenshaw's here to see you. And it was like, you're kidding. Can't be serious. And he said, yes, I am. He's here. So he said he heard the phone being crashed down. 5 minutes later, there was a screech of tires outside as the car pulled up and the door flew open. Ben Crenshaw said to Jimmy, just going into the back shop, tell him I couldn't wait. Archie burst through the door. Where is he? And Jimmy said, he couldn't wait. He said, what do you mean he couldn't wait? And Ben Crenshaw said, I walked out and he had a smile on his face. It was so big. He said we got on great. I'm sure they would do. He was a very keen golf historian.
Well, his wife was the granddaughter of the great Musselburgh legend that played against Willie Park, wasn't he?
I think that's the connection.
Yeah. I think so. A great golf historian. But Jimmy Hume, you obviously knew him well, having played at Gullane for years. Tell us a story about when you were, I think you're still a member of the Gullane team, and the young guys and the whippersnappers in the team were there, and Jimmy said, come on, Gordon, show them how to hit a 3-iron 150 yards.
That's the distance I hit it now, Mum. No, Joey was taking a team practice, and there was a group of us, most of them, an awful lot younger than I was. And he said he picked a target about 100 yards away, and he said, "Now I want you to hit balls to that target." So they all took out their sand irons, and Jimmy said, "With a 5-iron." There was a look of puzzlement on their faces. None of them could hit a 5-iron 100 yards. They just couldn't do it. They didn't have that shot in their armory.
So, I mean, could you tell us a wee bit about the difference between links golf and US golf? Because believe it or not, we've got a lot of listeners from the US, and hello to anyone lying on the beach in Cabo, because believe it or not, even people lying on the beach in Cabo listen to this podcast, which is brilliant. But can you a wee bit of difference between what's links golf and US golf?
Well, I played a lot of courses in the US. I'm very, very impressed with some of the municipal type courses, pay and play. They're really, really good. And I did play the occasional links type course, and the Americans knew how to build links courses. Very, very good. The main difference really is the turf is so much tighter. Links, and you're the golf historian, but the links was basically the ground between the sea and the arable land, wasn't it? That they
Yeah.
couldn't really do anything with. It's just it's natural turf and it's tight turf. In most cases, being beside the sea, it's very exposed to the winds, and that's probably the main difference in playing the courses. Is you have to manufacture shots rather than just hitting to target golf, as can be the case with a lot of the parkland courses. I say the ones I played a lot of courses in America, and I thought they were excellent. They know how to build golf courses and design golf courses, but we tend to design them now. It's far too long, certainly for me. Or far too long. All right, for you big hitters like yourself, Malcolm.
I'm going backwards fast. I can tell you going very, very fast.
Not as fast as me.
Just nipping back quickly to whiskey. I mean, we talked before years ago about how big Johnnie Walker was, and that's to do with the packaging. And then you tell a bit about that. And then was it you that told me the story of how the term the real McCoy came about?
Oh yes, the real McCoy. That was Prohibition. There was a huge increase in the sales of Scotch whisky during Prohibition because it went in illegally. There was an island off America. I can't remember the exact figures, but it was something like a population of 1,000 people, and they took in terms of Scotch whisky about about 50,000 cases every year. And one of the original booze runners was called McCoy, and he took the whiskey from the genuine whiskey from the islands onto mainland USA. So he was that was called the real McCoy. It meant it was the real stuff. But Prohibition did a lot for the sales of Scotch whiskies. But when Prohibition finished, the people who were best placed were the whiskey smugglers. They were the best placed to take on and go legitimate and take on the business above board.
And then was it not also round about then that France had a terrible problem with phylloxera, so there weren't any
That's
fresh
right. That was in the 1800s.
1800s?
Because
Okay.
brandy was the drink of the day, popular drink of the day, and the phylloxera asterix beetle wiped out worst of the vineyards in France. Supplies of brandy or cognac dried up, and as an alternative, they turned to whiskey. That was round about the time when whiskey blenders were coming into. Because prior to that, whiskies had just been single distilleries, and whiskey blenders realised that Johnnie Walker being one of the very early ones, that if you mixed whiskies from different distilleries, you could not only come up with a very interesting taste that was more complex than a single, but that was consistent. That was the key. So the two coming together, the phylloxera asterix beetle and the art of blending coming in, was the real springboard for the Scotch whisky industry.
Yeah. So America could claim that it's had a bit of an effect on whiskey in Scotland. Not that I like to tell any Americans about that, but I always quite enjoy them. They did help us out along the way with whiskey. Now, you got member 3 different golf clubs. Tell us a bit about your 3 clubs and why you're a member there and
Oh,
why you
gosh.
like them, and a wee bit about, you know, when up near Inverness, where else do you play up round about there? But you got up at Garten as well, aren't you?
Yes, I'm at Garten. The reason I was at Garten, I mean, it's distillery country. It's in the middle of Speyside, and I used to go up quite regularly to visit different distilleries. Always looking to play golf. Played quite a bit at Garten. I used to go up and play in the Garten Open with a group of guys from Gullane. It's a team competition as well as an individual competition. Somebody at boat pointed out to me that the amount of money I was spending in visitor green fees, I mean, it'd be quids in if I joined, which I did years ago. It's a super facility. It's a very scenic golf course. I'm sure you've played it.
Yeah.
Bit too tight for you, the Malcolm.
Right.
You have to be accurate. It suits me.
Exactly.
short and accurate. But no, it's a great place, and it's a wonderful part of the world, Speyside, and very good golf courses around. I played recently. I played Granton on Spey. I hadn't played it for years, and my criticism of it when I played it a long time ago was it was just some of the holes were just like open fields, but an incredible number of trees have grown up, bushes and heather. The whole thing just looks quite spectacular now. It's a super looking golf course. And King Yusi, I played that in a team match for of Garten a couple of years ago. That was very scenic. It was very high up, tremendous view over Speyside. Just a lovely area to visit as a tourist and also to play golf. I actually had a great experience a few years ago. Went helicopter to see the distilleries at Speyside. Because when you're driving through Speyside, the distilleries are all off road, so you can't really relate one to t'other. A lot of them are quite difficult to find, in fact. Going up in a helicopter, great opportunity to look down and see the distilleries along the River Spey. So there's about 40 of them almost. That was a wonderful experience. It was a great place to play golf, but also just to visit. Um, most of my golf nowadays I play at Bruntsfield. That's 1761. It's the fourth golf club in the world. It's a great facility, and we took the decision 5 or 6 years ago to rejig the course. Got in golf architects. They made a super job. It was a good course before, but it's now a really, really good course. I would say, I'm biased, it's best course in Edinburgh. We had the open qualifying there. That was great to watch. Some of these guys are so good. But it's also a very friendly club, very central. It's a very scenic club down by the sea. Judith, my wife, comes from the west of Scotland. She says it's
Good person from the west.
It's almost as nice as the west of Scotland. Tremendous views. Just a nice place to play golf, and so close to the centre of Edinburgh. 15, 20 minutes from Princess Street. It's amazing. But Gullane's a super facility as well. They have 3 courses. Of course, they had the Scottish Open for Essex. But it was a treat watching these guys play what was a made-up course. We have 3 courses, and we took some of the holes from number 2 course and rejigged some of the holes on number 1 to try and make a test for them. But they hit the ball so far now it's very difficult. I'm sure you found it in Essex. They make a nonsense of courses that we think are difficult. But it's a very good club. I'm pleased to be a member. In fact, I'm an honorary member.
Well done. That's
Well, they can put the subscriptions up as much as they like. keep the visitors away.
What's your kind of thoughts on how far the golf ball goes now for these young bucks that can hit it? Should they be able?
Scary, Malcolm. Absolutely scary. I played a few holes at Bruntsfield a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday afternoon just on my own. And I was aware a young guy teed off behind me. And our third hole, it's about 300 yards into the wind, and hit for me 2 really good shots onto the green. And I went to pick up my bag. And that was a ball sitting beside it. I thought, must have dropped out my bag. Oh, that's not my ball. I thought, surely not. And right enough, over the hill came this young guy who'd driven just to the edge of the green. So I said to him at the next tee, just play through. It was a par 5. And I'd hit a good drive down it. And he hit this ball. I think the ball's something like 550 yards. And he was just short of the 150-yard marker. It's just incredible the distance there.
Yeah.
In my time of being reasonably low handicap golfer, there was people who hit the ball the wrong way, but never anything like it now. It's a combination of things, isn't it? It's the ball, the club, and there's the top players that are so fit now. athlete.
You made a lot of great friendships, through your golfing career as well. But I mean, I talked to you a while ago about, did you know Bob Humble? And
Oh, yes.
for those who don't know Bob Humble, a quick story I think probably told you was, the Links Diary have just done a story on him. The, contemporary years would think Bob, and the semi-final at Kilspindie. I think he's won the club championship in 6 different decades, and he was standing on the 17th tee, 1 down, and his opponent finished birdie, and he won the final. I think 6 and 5 against the guy who was scratch. So he managed to hack it out the rough on the 17th into the hole. He missed the green in the 18th. The lad put it to 10 feet. He chipped in, and the lad missed the putt. So, what have you got to say about Mr. Humble golf?
I played against Bob Humble on a number of occasions, playing for the Gullane team in the East Lothian league, Winter League, and he beat me so many times. I suggested to him I should be on his mantelpiece. He was a remarkable player. It was foursomes golf, and he's the only golfer I can think of I've ever played with who could recover his his partner's bad shots. If you played foursomes, you know what it's like. If somebody plays a bad shot, you tend to play a bad shot to follow it. You're so annoyed with them for put you in trouble. But Bob Humble, no. I mean, his partner could duff the ball off the tee, and he would take out a 3-wood and put it in the middle of the green. He's just so consistent. A lovely guy as well, but very, very good player.
So, Roscoe, are you strapped in your chair?
I am strapped in my chair, and I'm
Good.
I'm
My
in.
next question, if you got, is what do you think of course ratings? All these ratings that are coming out. We should have recorded.
Far too complicated for me, Malcolm. I'll leave that one to you.
It's too complicated for the people that do them. Don't worry.
Okay, guys, you got any other questions for Gordon before my last one? Gordon's going to be is what has golf meant to you? But if you got any?
I do.
Go.
You thought I was just going to sit here and play sick all night and not be able to talk.
I knew you wouldn't. I mean, an Aussie that sits quiet all night and doesn't say anything it's just not happening.
No, Gordon, I've really enjoyed listening to, and I'm sure we've only got, of all of the stories that you have, I'm sure we've got just a smidge of an insight into, your world in the trade, and it resonates with me a lot. And now, despite being a Hearts fan and you're a Hibs fan, both my parents are from Leith, as some of the listeners may have heard me mention before. But you might appreciate that both my parents are from Leith. My mum's first job was in one of the whiskey bonds down there. I think it was the Bell's Whiskey Bond down there is that in Constitution Street as well? So, so I have that affinity of my mum working in that environment. And whenever I go down there now, she's not with us anymore. I, have a moment to think about her down there in the whiskey bond. So it's very nice. But my father, when he left and took my mother and left Leith to Australia, his one and only job was in the wine industry. He stumped up to the Murray Tyrrell, the Tyrrell family, and he went out there to play football, and he had no idea about wine, as not many Scotsmen did back in the late 60s, as you'll appreciate. And Murray Tyrrell gave him a job and says, well, if you're here to play sport, I like that. You can start Monday. And he worked for 46 years. And he did a lot of similar things to your ambassadorial role. So I've been enjoying listening to yours because it's just made me think about my dad, who's still with us and is down in Australia. So through my connection to the wine industry, I got to see the ins and outs of how great quality wine's made. And I think some of the listeners would like to, hear from you too, because not everyone knows. I think everyone loves a good Scotch who appreciates what Scotch whiskey is all about, but maybe they don't necessarily know what makes a really good Scotch, and what the process is, and just what it looks like to go through and get when it's 12, 20, however many years of age, what that process looks like.
Yeah, well, you're right. There are many similarities between Scotch and wine. The question I was often asked was, "What's my favourite Scotch?" I used to say one that somebody else has bought for me, but
Now it's even starting to sound more like my
it's
dad.
very Scottish. But no, it's a very good question. It very much depends on personal taste. I mean, I spoke about the classic malts with the range from the very light Glenkinchie to the really heavy peaty Lagavulin. Lagavulins a love it or hate it whiskey. A Freud and a egg from the island of Islay. It's very much personal taste. Is this thing also about are single malts better than blended whiskies? Well, I'll say that blended whiskies came about as a result of the blenders looking for consistency and also different flavors. It for me, my favorite Scotch would be enjoying it with a friend, someone who really appreciated it. But a lot of it has to do with the cask as well. I work part time for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I sit on the tasting panel, which is quite funny when I tell my golfing chums I can't play tomorrow because I'm working. We don't exactly see it as being work, but we taste 10 single malt samples at a time, nosing and tasting them neat, and tasting them, splash of water and describe them, mark them out of 10. But that's all about the cask. They go to great lengths to make sure that the very best of casks, and the cask can make a huge difference to whiskey. It depends also on the whiskey because something like Glenkinchie is very light, single malt. You don't want to leave it in a cask for too long; just can't handle it. For some of the heavier malts, say Macallan, for instance, it's famous for being for having some very old expressions. Um, but they can go on for a long time, but it's an inexact science. What makes one whiskey better than another whiskey? It's so difficult to say. I suppose my favourite would have been Johnnie Walker Black for obvious reasons. But I used to do tastings for Johnnie Walker with Johnnie Walker Blue, which was £150 a bottle, over Johnnie Walker Gold, which is the next one down at probably £100, down to Johnnie Walker Red. And if I was having a drink afterwards, I would have a Johnnie Walker Black with ice and water. That was the other thing people used to ask, what's the best way to drink it? Drink it as you want to drink it. That's the answer to that. But there are tremendous similarities with wine. It's just trying to control the character and doing whatever you need to do to produce the same flavour time and time again. That's very important.
And is it always oak barrels that the whiskey?
Yes, yeah, because the oak breathes, allows the it just changes the character of whiskey at a period of time. If you put it into a drum, it wouldn't, metal drum, wouldn't do anything.
Yeah. You get, so there's probably plenty of other questions. You've probably sat down and you've probably drunk, several very famous golfers of serious note around the world under the table at odd times around.
Not with 40.
Not exactly. But on a more serious note, you talked about and Malcolm introduced your golf memberships there, and what a privilege to be, part of the framework and fabric of so much important golf in and around Edinburgh and East Lothian. For the history buffs, Bruntsfield Links. I've not played at Bruntsfield Links, and that's not leading in there for an invitation to come and play with you. But I would love to. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'll take
You're welcome.
I'll take
Even as a germ boy.
I was sure I wouldn't be the only one down there. But I have been down there, and when I walked in there, the course just had this certain look, and I'm lucky enough to have been to Royal Melbourne a couple of times. I'm not saying it looks like Royal Melbourne, but Royal Melbourne is a Mackenzie course, and if you've studied a little bit of Mackenzie, you can see those traits and influences around there, and I think the course has been adjusted a little bit over the time since it was first iterated by, and also had a mention on this podcast, Willie Park Jr. was the original architect, but it just looked fabulous, and it had that Mackenzie influence that I think I could see. Maybe someone might challenge me on that, but yeah, when you've got a course down there at Bruntsfield Links, Willie Park Jr., Alistair Mackenzie, touched up by James Braid, Fred Hawtrey, and the last references down there for architectural work is Mackenzie and Ebert, who we know,
Yes.
the significance of those guys. So Lovely looking course. But the course I do want to ask you a question about, and we also touched on that right at the start. And in our last podcast and some of our podcasts, we've always, well, I have in particular, always believed the importance of these particular types of golf courses and what they mean. I want to hear it from you because you mentioned it right at the start. Silvernails.
Yes.
Well, if I ask you, what's the importance of Silvernails golf to the golfing fabric, as I mentioned before, of Edinburgh? How would you describe that?
Well, it's somewhere that anybody can go and play, and it's a very, very good golf course. It's a great layout, super looking hole down beside the sea, and it's very accessible. That's the main selling point for it. You can buy a ticket and just go and play, uh, and you'll not get many better layouts over.
So it was one of the first courses that you played when it
Yes,
came
it
to you?
was. Yes, I lived around that area, and they were just somewhere you could pay. And those days, it wasn't terribly much to just go and turn up and enjoy yourself. So it's a great facility. One of a number of good courses we've got in municipal. We have in
Well,
It was one of the first courses I played as well, actually, Silvernails.
so, uh,
And that the little stretch that goes kind of through the trees right down at the bottom of the course, um, is a great little stretch of holes.
yeah, it's
And
very
and
attractive.
again,
So,
the 18th, and I think until Spey Valley opened, I think up in the Highlands, it was the longest hole in Scotland. I think the 18th at Silvernails, it's 606 yards or something like
yes, it's
that.
something like that.
And yeah, it's always a stern test at the end of a round of golf up there.
But
Certainly,
a
so
great layout, isn't it?
terrific, really terrific, really
Mhm.
terrific.
I 100% agree. And, I think, this podcast, as Malcolm mentioned there before, gets listened all around the world and a lot of times in the US. And, it's important for us to always, we highlight these great, wonderful courses that we've got, that some courses are huge names, but I think it's also important to continue to highlight, these Edinburgh Council courses and what they can offer a travelling golfer that might not be on the top end bucket list trip, that you can rock into Edinburgh, stay at somewhere great, eat somewhere great, and still play some golf and, be next to Bruntsfield Links, but enjoy exactly the same views, with the airplanes coming across. So if you've flown into Edinburgh, as everyone travelling here usually does, and you look out on the left-hand side, you'll see Silvernails, and then you'll see Bruntsfield, and then you'll see the Royal Burgess. So it's just a wonderful way to enter Edinburgh if you are in a golf course. Sit on the left-hand side of the plane. That's my tip.
Another good example of a course in Edinburgh that's very playable is the Braids.
Yep.
They're not long, but incredibly tricky. A real test of golf. A great match play course, the Braids. And normal in pretty good condition.
Definitely take a few spare balls. There's a lot of gorse up there.
Yes, it wouldn't suit Malcolm.
golfing.
I see the butt of these things. That's quite enjoy it. That's
Malcolm's my foursomes partner this year, so I won't
Oh,
know what
yeah,
to say against.
absolutely.
What have you done to deserve that?
Any more questions, boys? I've got actually two more for Gordon. One, quite an interesting one, goes to accuracy. Any more questions, boys? Good. So, Gordon, I think you've got 14 holes in one, which is a bit greedy.
It's
So you have to talk us through all of them, but to try and combine you 14 holes in one, and then the last question will be what golf means to you.
well, I think 14 holes in one just proves it's better to be lucky than good. One out of two is not bad. And what golf has meant to me, it's been a big part of my life. I've met so many nice people, so many interesting people. I've enjoyed it. Used to be very competitive. I'm not competitive now. I just play bounce games with the boys. And you were talking about the handicapping system. We use a Sunningdale system where if you go 2 up, you have to give a shot. So the game invariably finishes at the 17th, if not the 18th. So it's just not competitive. But it's been great to be involved with it. I met a lot of nice people. I still enjoy practicing. Keep searching for the Holy Grail, Malcolm. If I find it, I'll let you know. I don't know, maybe I won't. I'll keep secrets to myself.
I think I remember you've met Roger Davis a few times playing with Roger, and I hit a terrible shot. I said, "Dodge, what do you wrong?" He said, "Why? You want to replicate it?" I think it's Jack Nicklaus. I think won a major, and someone said, "You've hit the ball beautifully all 4 days. How do you think you've done?" He said, "I think I hit 4 good shots in 4 days." So you're always striving for that next little bit, and it's a game of misses, which way the ball bounces.
Search for perfection.
No, that's a North Berwick thing, isn't it? Perfection.
I don't, I don't get that, but
Yeah.
I know the whole you mean. Like, I should say I don't get it as perfection.
Gordon, it's been an absolute joy having you on. I mean, knowing you and Judith for so long, and it's a treat to have you on here. Thanks for all you've done to help me playing golf. Not seen enough of you over the last couple of years. It's been busy, but now that I haven't got a job, there's no reason to be busy. So let's catch up and get a game, and maybe get the 4 of us get out for a bat. David actually did a golf fitters course. He's actually got all the stuff to fit your golf clubs for you and so on. So, 3 golf nuts just really enjoy golf and enjoy the camaraderie. And that's one of the things you sum up, the camaraderie in golf. You've always expressed that, the honesty in it. And on top of that, I mean, you're obviously a fairly able person. I mean, how the hell you got your wife, I have no idea, because she's far too good for you.
She would agree with that, Malcolm.
Exactly. Also, what you've done in business has been phenomenal, and I mean, you are one of the great pub golfers of Scotland, and have been for many years. Anyways, thanks a lot for coming on board. So we'll just round off with a close. So thank you, folks, for listening. Hope you really enjoyed listening to Gordon and his stories and the correlation between whiskey and golf. And if you come into Scotland, come look at the website, where Scotland for Golf began, www.scotlandwheregolfbegan.com. You'll find lots of blogs and videos and stories on there. Subscribe to our newsletters, and we're on social at Where Golf Began and Facebook at Scotland Where Golf Began. Thank you for listening wherever you are. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.